Yeah, headlights and much more. Whatever these spotlights are gonna kill
Check
me.
1, 2.
Huh?
Is there active editing here?
Yes.
I'm just going to check the
All the beta people are rolling in late. Oh, here's March.
Both our people.
Janae's going to check the last one really quick. Can you hear this, Janae? Check 1, 2. Oh, yeah.
We're gonna kill this. Yeah.
All right, it works. Awesome. All right, welcome everybody to the 2025 presidential and vice presidential debate. We're going to start with opening statements. Per the coin flip, the debt elimination party, you get to determine if you go first, second, or third. Which would you like?
We'll elect the third.
1K.
We will go first.
All right, 1K.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ham Penning, and I'm honored to stand here today representing OneKU, a coalition dedicated to bringing together diverse voices to build a stronger, more inclusive, and effective campus community. Alongside me is my running mate, Douglas Jamal, and together we are passionate about serving our students here on campus. I've had the privilege of serving in various leadership roles across our campus, including currently as the Fund Development Director on our Senate's executive team, where I oversee the management and operations of the Community Development Fund, a fund that provides dedicated support for student organizations and events that promote diversity, intercultural education, and
Your mic is off.
how do I turn it
something
on?
was up.
Hello?
That's fine.
All right. Yes, I'm the director of the Community Development Fund. That's a fund that provides dedicated support for student organizations and events that promote diversity, intercultural education, and support for marginalized students here. My running mate, Douglas, brings an extensive amount of experience in a variety of different organizations here on our campus and shares my deep commitment to improving our student life here. Our coalition believes passionately that every student at KU should feel heard, supported, and empowered, no matter where you come from or what your journey may look like here. Our vision is clear: one campus, one student body, one KU, united in purpose, driven by action, and committed to creating meaningful progress that will empower Jayhawk students here today and in the future. We've built our platform around 3 core student-first initiatives. First, community. We are committed to fostering an inclusive and vibrant campus environment where each Jayhawk feels genuinely connected, respected, and engaged. This means proactively addressing barriers that will hinder our students from thriving and amplifying their voice and celebrating the rich variety of experiences and identities here within our student body. Second, infrastructure. We aim to improve both the physical and digital resources of our campus, ensuring that our facilities, technologies, and spaces will effectively meet the evolving needs of students in a way that is sustainable. A strong campus infrastructure is one that supports learning, collaboration, and overall student success. From student-built individual study pods to increasing the use of biodegradable materials here throughout our campus, OneKU is committed to innovative solutions that will enhance our student life and support sustainability. Third, efficiency. We pledge to streamline processes, cut through unnecessary bureaucracy, and create a greater level of transparency and accountability within not just our student governance here, but beyond across our campus. By promptly and effectively translating our actions into meaningful policy that will generate change here on our campus. Tonight, I look forward to discussing these ideas with you all further, and most importantly, hearing your voices in this very room. Together, we have an incredible opportunity to shape the future of KU, a future that is collaborative, innovative, and inclusive. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from the president of Astra.
Thank you all for being here today. Very glad to be here myself. Very glad to hear all the other ideas, all the other coalitions. Very grateful to the Election Commission for having us today. My name is Andrew Murga. I'm a junior finance major from Kansas City, and I'm running for student body president of the Astra Coalition. In all my classes and my experience here at KU on campus and just speaking to people I'm around, no one ever understands or feels like they're talking about student senate or what's going on and what process they're deciding what we're actually doing on campus. This really drove me to think and ask myself, why are we so disconnected as students from the organization that's supposed to be representing what we want? I know that students feel disconnected because only 3,200 people voted in the last election. Over 20,000 students attend this university. I'm confident that we could avoid a lot of the problems and disconnect that students have with Student Senate if students felt like their voice has any weight in this process. They currently don't because Student Senate tends to hire from within. They run on empty promises and they hire their friends by promoting from within. This excludes the majority of students here at KU. Henry and I, as newcomers, guarantee to fight for the average student's perspective here at the University of Kansas. We're not here to pad our resumes. We're here to fight to include the underrepresented communities that both of us represent. We understand what it's like to be excluded from this process, and we understand the problems that it causes. Our main idea is to fight to address where students have felt disconnected and ignored. We want to bring back the homecoming celebration and parade to encourage community here at KU. We want to enhance our job preparation resources to ensure that we're ready for the world outside of KU after graduation. We want to enhance and improve our academic support resources here to address all majors and all schools. And overall, we want to strategically target students who are left out of these decision-making processes. Imagine how much better campus life would be if we all worked together instead of leaving all the complex solutions and complex problems to the hands of a couple few. Thank you all for coming today, and regardless of which coalition you side with or which side you're on, we're all better off by this student involvement and engagement.
Hello and happy Friday, everybody. My name is Sam Musa, and I'm going to be talking about 3 quick things. First off, who I am and why I'm in front of you today. And then a little bit more about what I see going forward. And third, what we need. And to talk a little bit more about what we need, you have no way of knowing that I have any knowledge of what you need. So let me talk a little bit more about why I'm qualified. So I graduated KU with a major in economics and a minor in business in 2015. And I went on to do a little bit of consulting, specifically workforce management. What that means is I look at an organization and I dissect. A little bit of the bad, you trim. A little bit of the good, you duplicate. But the hard part, and the most important part, is looking at an organization and finding out what they need. Well, how do they know what they need? If they needed it, they would have done it already. So there's a lot of looking at data, looking at the silent things like numbers, looking at the silent things like people who don't vote and what their needs reflect, because they're not accurately represented by people that do. So in workforce management, what I did was look at an organization and just keep the healthy things healthier and the unhealthy things moved into a different way, something that could be a little bit more constructive. So I'd like to do that going forward with KU. So the why as to why I'm here is I am a law student senator. And just as a member of the law school, I started noticing a couple of, I wouldn't say even issues, but really just friction involved in Student Senate. So I started watching Student Senate. And I saw a lot of healthy things being healthy and some unhealthy things being unhealthy. So my goal was to come in and simply observe, trim some of the unhealthy, duplicate some of the healthy. And likewise, I've noticed that the school has some great things. The people that represent the school have some great ideas. And going forward, it's a wonderful idea to elect someone that has good ideas. But I think the important thing Because you can come in with a preconceived what you want to do and the ideas that you have going forward. But I think the better thing is to analyze from the inside and see what people need. So lastly, and I wanted to say apologies in advance. My vice candidate partner had a family matter come up, so he wasn't able to attend. The reason that I think that I can address what we need is because as a member of the Student Senate, I've seen a large deficit grow and people act frantically in need to remedy a problem that they don't know how to remedy, where to remedy, at what rate to start making these fixes. So I'm here to say that I'm here exclusively to look at the problems, grease the wheels for the things that need to move forward, and hopefully stymie the things that could be negatively affected and course correct. So the Debt Elimination Party is here for a very simple purpose, to help the organization of KU thrive. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from the vice presidential candidates of each coalition. We'll start with OneKU.
Hello? Oh, hello? Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Firstly, thank you all for coming to the debate. It means much to know that our students are willing to participate in their student government elections. My name is Douglas Jamal, and I'm a junior here at the university studying philosophy and global studies. Today, Hamp and I come to you representing a coalition that recognizes the students of our school as our priority and brings us together as a more whole OneKU. Prior to this role, I've been able to experience and enjoy many different organizations and leadership positions during my time on campus, with me currently serving as a community senator for the Black Student Union. As a current senator, I've had the privilege to interact with many representatives from the many schools and organizations our campus has, and I have loved participating in the success of our students here. OneKU believes that our students have the right to be included and heard in all aspects. Each one of us came to our university with a goal and purpose, and regardless of what you have come to do, you have the right to feel wanted, to feel secure, and to have a voice in what happens here. As Hamp has previously mentioned, our coalition strives for a unified purpose, in which we can all collectively push for a better KU now and for the years to come. Our Students First initiatives are tasks we feel can be implemented and finished within the next academic year. And I'll elaborate on how we plan to hit our goals for promoting better community, infrastructure, and efficiency in our term. As Hamp has said, we want to ensure an inclusive environment for our students while celebrating our unique backgrounds and identities. For our community initiative, we first plan to better support international students by creating a multi-purpose international student space, so that our campus can feel a little smaller with every ounce of support underneath. We plan to emphasize our talents by better showcasing our students' artworks throughout the Kansas Union and the Burge. And at the end of the year, we hope to have a festival in which all organizations and student groups can come together for a final celebration of what the year has brought us. For infrastructure, we plan to implement easier access to all of our students' growth and well-being. We plan to work with architecture students and create study pods in the union so that there's more space to work on your education and overall success. We also want to create more earth-friendly campus by working with recycling to begin using biodegradable alternatives to cut back on the plastic and paper waste found on campus, alongside other initiatives. For efficiency, we seek to simplify student senate processes so that there is better transparency and engagement for those who may not have the time to be aware of everything that goes on in their student government. This includes the streamlining of funding processes, as well as better communication when decisions are made that directly impact the students. This looks like using social media as an accessible platform for students to talk about student senate updates and decisions, and implementing a town hall style forum where students can initiate important conversations directly with their student government representatives. Thank you for coming today, and I'm excited to hear what ideas we all have to better support the goal of serving the student body here at the University of Kansas. Thank you very much.
Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Peter Whalen. I'm currently a junior studying accounting and finance. Over my past 3 years here at the university, I've been given a lot of great opportunities that would not have been possible anywhere else. I'm running today out of a sense of gratitude and a desire to give back to a campus that has given me so much. With that being said, I understand that the vice presidential role is an arduous one and is a position I intend to approach with the utmost humility. Me and Andrew have 3 primary outlooks that we will embody during our time in office. Hearing out the everyday student's perspective that has been disenfranchised from the student senate, gaining a larger portion of underrepresented students' viewpoints, and building a community and a sense of camaraderie for our university that will last for decades to come. Since me and Andrew really started to meet with student organizations off campus, we have seen firsthand that a significant majority of student voices are left unheard, not sought out, and not respected. If I'm able to ensure that the best ideas of each of you rise to the top, I'm more than confident in my ability to leave campus in a better place than I found it. The platforms of homecoming weekends, engagement, career preparation, and academic support that Andrew previously mentioned are things that can all be realistically achieved during our time in office. We are not politicians who make empty promises and when it comes time to deliver, disappear out of the student eye. We are average students, just like you all, who want to see change.
I realize I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Sasha, I'm the chair of the elections committee, and I'll be moderating this debate today. We'll start with some pre-prepared questions, but during the debate, you can scan this QR code that will be on the screen and submit any questions that you have for the candidates. After the pre-prepared questions, we will then move towards audience questions taken from this one. The first section of this debate will have questions addressed to the presidential candidates. And I'm going to start with platform-specific questions. So first, for the debt elimination party. Your platform emphasizes eliminating the deficit while fully funding various fee entities like the UVK. Student fee was reallocated from services like Safe Ride this year to try and service some of this debt. And the chancellor has indicated the university is adverse to taking on new investments that might support student senate. What services are going to be cut instead of fee entities under your administration to service the debt?
Thank you. That's a great question, Sasha. First, I'd like to start with avoiding the question completely. Now, I think that that's a great question. You say, what services are we going to cut? Instead of asking alternative questions. We immediately act as if one person's benefit is the other person's loss. We're acting like growth in this university is rivalrous. Instead of asking alternative questions like, what else can we do to look at the budget, to look at the analysis? If you very specifically looked at the Senate fee package that had a 2% increase in rates approved by the Board of Regents. Now, previously, in all previous years, we've had a 3% increase in rates. Now, that means that we're operating with an increase of fee that is below inflation. So before we've come to the table, we've lost 1% of our money. And now we're saying we need to make everything better. We are coming back from COVID. We're finally seeing production. We're finally seeing manufacturing. We're starting to see a lot of things starting to stymie the loss of economies of scale. So we're actually starting to get to a place where we might be able, as a country, to start catching up to all of the things that we put on pause for several years. And now, the interesting question is everyone says, all right, so let's cut. If you know anything about budgetary needs, too much cuts too quickly is terrible. So the first question I have is, can we create a logical, reasonable proposal to go to the Board of Regents to bump our 2% increase, once again, inflation being 3%, to something a little bit more reasonable? Now, this is going to be not an easy task. You have professional CFOs saying, hey, we decided 2%, it's over. So can we come back with a more reasonable economic proposal from the student body that says 2.2 is what we need to adequately fund the UDK to the point where we're not having riots on Zoom calls over UDK funding or accosting 19-year-olds who are on stand simply saying why they were in a 10-hour room trying to come with a reasonable fee proposal, but that wasn't good enough. So my answer is, who has to cut? The short, we'll reorganize as need be, but right now, we're operating at a loss before we ever came to the table, and now we're gonna say to the people that sat us down at the table, how can we change the configuration? And that's my answer.
Thank you. The second question will be for OneKU. In the interest of time, I'll ask that you hold your applause until the closing statements, so that way we can get through more questions. OneKU. KU had bike shares as early as 2019 with their rides flying over 150 electric bikes and scooters to campus. all the bikes kept ending up at the bottom of the hill and it was discontinued. According to Parking and Transit, who oversaw the program, it will never ever come back. How will your proposal for bike share differ from past implementations and find success in Canada?
Yeah, so originally when we were, thinking about different ways to, one, it's good to get students outside moving around. Two, it's an indirect way to help ease the burden on our parking system, which we all know is a total nightmare currently. We went and I had a conversation with the director of transportation, and I'm not sure exactly what sorts of conversations you were engaging in when you were told that it would never, ever, ever come back. But based on what I was informed by the director of the Transportation and Transit program here at KU, the bike share program was something that was ended in 2019 we were rolling into COVID. So they had, at the end of 2019, they were using a third-party vendor management system. So it was not technically operated by Transit and Transportation. They're using a third-party vendor management system that was having internal problems outside of the university structure here. And that was ending up with, again, you mentioned all the bikes, for example, being collected at the bottom of a hill. And that was a problem that he brought up in this conversation. And that was a direct result of the vendor management company's employees failing to do their duties and reset the bike racks and maintain the proper required maintenance on the bicycles themselves. So we're ending up with these sorts of issues that you are addressing. They expressed a sentiment to me that they would be looking to explore re-implementing the bike share program with a new third-party vendor management system. So that is something that we will actively be looking at over this coming summer, should we be elected, to make sure that we're thoroughly vetting the company that we're entrusting with the responsibility of managing our bikes and making sure that they are safe and usable for our students here at KU. Thank you.
Thank you. Reminder to hold the applause. This last question for Astra. Your platform, or besides providing homecoming floats, your platform focuses on services mostly already offered by existing entities on campus. Service days, for example, are offered by the big event and Center for Community Outreach, student community activities, supporting live entertainment and outdoor movie screenings. And the Alumni Center hosts networking events as an existing mentoring platform. What new directions will your administration take these services in?
Great question. While these are services that are already offered, we all felt like as KU students, as the average KU student, no one around me, no one in my classes, no one that I had ever spoken to had been adequately aware, or these services had not been adequately advertised to us, and that's a huge problem here at KU. I'm not sure how many people in the audience know, but we each pay about $500 a semester to Student Senate to provide these existing services, and they're not well advertised. I'm sure the majority of students in the audience could not have told you that any of those services are just provided, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to connect the average student, the processes that are taking their money and spending them on things that they should be able to use. So while these services exist, we are here, we're going to houses, we're going to different student organizations to figure out what they want their money spent on, what they're feeling about Student Senate, and how they can feel like their voice is being heard in this process. And since they don't know that these services exist or that these events exist to provide these services, there's a huge problem, there's a huge disconnect. That's why we have a disconnect when it comes to different student resources being cut. There doesn't need to be a cut, there doesn't need to be different things being taken. There can be an equitable sharing, there can be something that is done for every student if we have these voices engaged. When we have students engaged, we have accurate polling, we have accurate results in the student fee dispersion, and we can't lose that. I don't know how many students in the audience know, but we are operating at a six-figure plus deficit, and that is threatening our ability to allocate the full fee that we pay every semester. If we don't address this deficit now, we'll lose this ability. We're one of 5 universities across the country that has the ability to spend all of our fee dollars as we wish as students. And administration has stated that if we don't address the deficit now, we'll lose this privilege. So while we have these services, and while they might not be advertised, we'll lose these powers unless we start doing something different now. And that lies with newcomers like Henry and I.
This next question is for all the coalitions, and just indicate if you'd like to go first in the call. The president appoints one student to the parking commission. What will you ask them to advocate for in this appointment?
I'll start. What I would ask my appointee to a parking commission, very specifically, and this may be self-serving, is to have better communication with the Board of Parking Appeals. So if you guys are unfamiliar, you get a parking ticket, you don't like it, you appeal it. If on its face it was just a mistake, they'll just give it back to you right there. But what if it's a complicated question? It actually goes to the law school, and the student advocates become your lawyer. You'll get an email, you'll go up to a hearing, they'll argue, a judge will question them. It's an entire fight. Now, what happens when they make a decision? And more importantly, they decided this week what the word ambiguous means. I don't know if you've ever seen a parking sign that has an arrow, but it's not clear if it's this lot or it's the lot next to it that the arrow notes. So the university actually has all of these interpretations and case laws, and they change the law, even if it's written here. When it comes down to giving you the ticket, common law, or what we've decided in the courts, is actually what happens when you come to an appeal. So I would have my attendant have a better understanding of what happens at the ground level when we're enforcing and destroying tickets. What are we actually saying? And have that communicated back to the university so we can actively change ambiguous signs so that we don't have to go through 40 years of case law to figure out, oh, we've been making this mistake since 1984. The University v. Brohammer talks very specifically about what happens when there's a sign at the front of a lot and you park during a game day. Now, crazy enough, this has been happening for 40 years. So how do you change that? You go back to the university and say, hey, this has been ambiguous for 40 years. But unfortunately, the law school doesn't get to go back. They don't get to go back and talk to the university. They're busy. They're in law school. So what do? You just hope that people will get the idea because they keep getting ticketed. And unfortunately, tickets don't stop. They don't slow down. If anything, they've slowed this last year. Actually, since 2022. So my attendee, or my appointee, my apologies, my appointee would very specifically be able to relay binding case law back to the university so we can make active change so that these simple mistakes that we've been making for 40 years cease to be made.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think this ties back in sort of to this discussion that's been on everyone's mind recently about this disconnect that's been observed between student senate and what is being advocated for at a university policy level and the actual perspective of the students here at KU paying tuition dollars attending our university. So one thing that me and Douglas are looking to do is implement a platform committee within student senate. So this would have representatives from different committees in senate. This would also incorporate representatives from different academic departments, other organizational entities on campus, student orgs, what have you, with a standing charge of having those very conversations, those more intimate conversations with students on our campus here to better understand what our students are looking for and what they would like to be advocated for on this sort of commission. It's parking in this case, but I think this applies generally across the board. So we would form this committee, we would interact and have these conversations with these students, and then our appointee would go and represent information to the parking commission and advocate on behalf of the student perspective that our committee, me and Douglas ourselves, the student executive staff, and the appointee themselves that has gone out and curated this perspective to make sure that we are advocating for truly the perspective of the student that is paying the money to be here and is going to be affected by these changes directly. Thank you.
Of course, seems like everybody wants to capture the perspective of the average student. Obviously, we do as well. But we can be as transparent, we can communicate as much as we want, and it won't matter until the student actually feels engaged and like their voice has value in this process. So if we were to appoint somebody to parking or any issue for that matter, the student opinion wouldn't be heard until students are engaging and actually having their voices being shared at a perspective or at a rate that's proportionate to the amount of students here. 3,200 students living in a 20,000 plus size undergrad just doesn't make sense. And any issue, whether it be parking, homecoming, anything that we represent, wouldn't make much sense if we're working based on what 3,200 students think. So we can do anything with this issue. We can represent the average student perspective. We can reach out to them every single day. And it won't matter until the average student feels that their voice is being heard and when they speak up, they're being heard. This currently isn't happening because of the way that Student Senate is ran. Student Senate is ran by keeping the average student in the dark, and it shows students that empty promises go by without accountability, shows students that nothing's really done when their voices are heard, and that's why two people like us are here to advocate and engage the average student. Strategically targeting these communities that have been underrepresented Henry and I are both people who have been part of these communities who are underrepresented. We understand exactly where they are and how to target them, and that's the first step in engaging this voice. It's not transparency, it's not advocating for the average student. While those are important, they come way down the line once we actually convince students like us that our fee dollars are going towards things we want, that our fee dollars are listening to our voices and doing what we need.
Thank you. Student Senate has two types of legislation, bills which are binding and resolutions which are not binding because they fall on actors outside of scope to do something. This year, Student Senate passed resolutions on the Green New Deal FKU, gender inclusive housing, and reconsideration dual employment restrictions to just name a few. How will you make sure that these resolutions go beyond just a call for action and have their asks implemented by the people they're calling on? OneKU.
Yeah, you've hit an amazing point here. And I think this ties back into the way that Senate is currently spending its time. So, these resolutions that you've mentioned, the Green New Deal, the resolution regarding the GIA situation at GP, these are resolutions that were hardly given the time of day for even any consideration. I was in both of those meetings watching that legislation be presented, and both of those bills were not given the proper amount of thought and consideration due to the fact that we were so caught up in allocating different amounts to different student orgs. There's funding bills that we were considering. It was bogging down our system. Our system was being bogged down, and we were not given the opportunity. We did not create the opportunity for ourselves in the Senate to give these very important bills the proper consideration and thought to then be able to take that to the next step. So I guess with that being said, these are issues, both of these issues, campus sustainability and environmental concerns presented in the Green New Deal, concerns about the gender inclusive housing, opt-in arrangements in our different residence halls here. These are both issues that are relating to entities outside the scope of Student Senate, and that is where Senate and our students need to engage with each other to then have our leaders here on our campus represent those perspectives into these conversations that are being had. These are very important conversations. The student voice was almost completely ignored in the housing conversation with the GP GIA situation that happened here within the last month, and that is unacceptable. And as a student leader, should I be elected, that is the sort of conversation that I will make sure and ensure that the student voice and the very perspective of the students being impacted is incorporated into those decision-making practices. Thank you.
Of course. I think that any issue that extends beyond the scope of Student Senate would rely on an important and productive relationship with the administration here. And that really begins with open communication, that begins with emphasizing what the student wants. Administration could have bogged down the process within Student Senate, like had been mentioned, but that really ends once administration sees that students are advocating for something. There's nothing more that administration wants than to make the student happy, than to convince the student that their dollars are being spent effectively, that their leadership reflects what they actually want, that their leaders can represent them in an adequate way. And that's where our relationship with administration begins and continues positively, productively, through a open line of communication.
Sorry. Now, very specifically, I'll start with an anecdote. I love anecdotes. One of the more beloved mayors of Kansas City, Sly James, he was known for, not for all of the things he said in his resolutions and all of the actions he did, but very specifically when he had to go on a visit to a ballroom, he would go check at the hotel staff, he'd walk through the kitchens, shake everybody's hands, ask the janitors how they were doing. Everyone talks about boots on the ground, but how often are you checking on those troops? Very specifically, there's something I learned in the Marine Corps, sorry for another anecdote, is that the higher up you get, it's not that the more people work for you, it's the more you work for people. So when we pass a resolution, it's important to not only know what you're asking people to do, that call to action is important, but more importantly, who are the people with the interests? What are the incident reports like for the residence hall, the RAs, for the desk assistants? What is it like for the assistant director of student housing? Where is the disconnect coming? Who can talk to all of these levels? Because any individual student can't walk in off of the street and ask the director of student housing, hey, what do you think? Hey, this is how I feel. The average student isn't going to NACUR, the National Student Housing Conference every year, and they're not getting to voice their opinions. Those people that are doing that are not at the bottom level. So how do you trace these resolutions and make sure they're more than just call to actions? You find out who has the interest in the successful motion of this resolution. Who wants this to do well? You find them and you get them to stand for it. You support them because they'll be your biggest driving force. Any individual who says the administration can do it by themselves is wrong. Any individual who says I can do it by myself is wrong. How do you motivate an army to do it? You find who's already fighting that fight and you say, hey, how can I help? And that's it.
Thank you. This next question is about a program that Student Senate ran last year. Student Senate has had a warehouse on West Campus full of dormitory supplies collected during Jayhawk Junk. This collection never ended up being sold by student union activities as planned, so it's sitting out there collecting dust. What would you do with this program and its assets during your administration? Aaron?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting thing to bring up. And is definitely an underutilized resource, although I will say I'm not sure of the specifics of what exactly is housed in there, the quantities, things of that nature. But my general instinct here is I think this is a perfect opportunity for a partnership opportunity, for example, with the Student Engagement Center, an organization that is tied in with our student organizations, a plethora of different programs here at KU, interacting with these orgs, creating these events, interacting again on a more intimate level with our students here. So I would work to form partnerships alongside Douglas with organizations and entities such as the Student Engagement Center, and work with their staff, those people who are engaging on that intimate level with our students, to decide and develop programming where we could best work to disseminate these resources that we have on hand and are currently not being utilized whatsoever. I think it's a shame that those are sitting there. So we will definitely be looking into ways that we can form those partnerships to most effectively and efficiently disseminate those and maximize the amount of good they're able to do to benefit the student population here.
Of course, I would just like to point out that this storage began 2 Astra administrations ago, coalition that we're currently running under. And I think it perfectly represents how a bogged down student senate leaves a lot of projects desolate, isolated, abandoned. And I think that we're perfectly prepared, Henry and I, perfectly prepared to begin donating some of these items where we can, donating the items that still can be donated. But beyond that, navigating this issue amicably with the voice of the average student and turning around some of these processes that actually leave projects abandoned without much thought behind them.
Sam?
So we actually had in Student Senate a proposal earlier this year by High Power Rocketry Club in the KU campus that helps a lot of people get NASA internships because they build rockets. In this building, they will come in and say, hey, we really need money because we need to buy a new motor. We want money because we need new batteries. And the first thing I asked is, well, what do we already have? And nobody could really answer. We had an initiative come in that actually worked amazingly. We started saying, why don't we log and inventory our resources? People have checked in things that they didn't use, and they can check out things that they need, and we can reuse. And sure enough, we'll be able to reduce expenditure because, shocker, we recycled our resources. So, simple concept that we've learned since we were very small children. If you know what you have, you can use it over and over and over again, and we can reduce waste. So, I'll tell you right now, what I do is what I do with any business. All right, get an inventory of what you own. Make sure you know your assets. Make sure you know when people ask you for those same assets that you own them already, so you can reallocate them. The idea is very simple. Keep track of every single thing that comes in so you have a better idea of what you can put out. Student Senate has been starting to see the keys to this, and they have been making strides towards making sure that we're not having dead weight loss for no reason. So simply, to give a more practical answer, probably a large AI language model that would be able to cross-reference every request for goods, that would be able to process all of the static inventory that you would database, and be able to punch out approximately a net worth value, what you would be able to get rid of it for today. The answer is an economic proposal that I don't think could be adequately answered in 1 minute.
Thank you. This next set of questions is for the vice presidential candidates, and Sam, in lieu of your vice president. Firstly, how will you, in response to state and federal action, KU has rolled back diversity initiatives in Senate, spaces for queer people in housing, and research that discusses gender or race on campus. How will your administration protect and advocate for marginalized and minority students and programs? At Astra?
Yeah, so I think I touched on it earlier in my introduction, but one of the key elements of me and Andrew's, message that we're trying to spread is that, although we may be campaigning over the next few weeks, attending as many student groups as we can, that's something that's not going to stop. In fact, it's only going to be getting started as soon as if we were to be elected. So I think the answer to that question is making sure that we are attending every single, or meeting every single group across campus and making sure that their voices are heard, no matter their size, no matter who they are. It's having conversations with them and making sure that their voices are represented at a university-wide level, despite what federal action may be.
Hello, I love this question. Okay, so you're right. The university has definitely rolled back some of its DEI initiatives, and it's kind of hard for students, minority students, underrepresented students, to kind of comprehend that, because it's like, well, this university, especially University of Kansas, it's kind of like, how do we, as students, minority students, underrepresented, how do we make sure that our voices are heard? And that is where Student Senate comes in, correct? So what OneKU, what we've already talked about, is we want to have the end of the year festival. And what does that look like? So in the beginning of the year, there's this fest called a Hawk Week, kind of, and a Hawk Fest, where organizations are tabling out on Jayhawk Boulevard, music, vibes are good. There's just a bunch of organizations where people all see kind of what KU looks like, all the schools, everything like that. So Student Senate, what we're going to do here is we're going to make sure that we're going to be reaching out to the OMA, we're going to reach out to the SUA, Student Union Activities, Office of Multicultural Affairs, and we're going to see what can we do to make sure that, although University of Kansas can't really say diversity, can't say equality, can't say belonging, can't say inclusion, stuff like that, how can we still make sure that these students are seen and heard? And that looks like end of the year festival where everybody's together, everybody's interacting with one another, so we all recognize that we all exist. That means Greek life recognizes that School of Music is a thing, or that student athletics, recognize that the scholarship community is the thing. I think it's key that you honestly put everybody in each other's faces and you say, hey, these people exist, interact with them. And also, I want to bring up the fact that we want to also kind of create that student body town hall forum. So for groups who might not know that there are resources available to them, how can they come to us and say, okay, well, University of Kansas just said this about maybe my department, and it kind of falls under that, and I'm not accessible to that anymore. What can I do? What can I go to? Well, we plan to kind of have that sort of database where we can say, okay, well, maybe we can't have this under diversity anymore, but here's this opportunity for you, or here's this resource for you. At the end of the day, although these initiatives kind of have been rolled back, they don't just go away. Minority students don't just go away. Underrepresented communities don't go away. And it is our job as student senators and exec to kind of, make sure their voices are heard. So that's my answer.
And I would like to say, while Zach's family issue took him away today, I feel as if it would be unfair to be able to speak twice. I think that would be, I understand the family issues happen, but I think the Debt Elimination Party would like to waive any vice presidential candidate questions, just to take accountability for the absence.
Thank you. We still do want your perspective on this question. So if you feel any that you'd like to talk about, we're really able. The next question. Every year, Senate struggles with filling seats, international, specifically international and graduate students, as well as finding representatives from education and policy. What will you do to increase outreach to students not typically engaged with Senate and get them involved? At Astra.
Yeah, so I think, reaching out to them via email blast, via, just cabling on the union or in front of us can only go so far. I think what me and Andrew, I know we previously touched on it earlier, what we intend on doing is actually not just inviting them to Senate, but going out to the broader university and making sure that we're seeking that out. We don't just want to be the people who say, okay, well, if you want your voice represented, you have to come to us. We don't think that that's very inclusive. We don't think that that's very inviting. And we want to, make sure that we're doing our role in ensuring that the entire student body is represented.
Also a good question. So firstly, I want to say I completely understand kind of getting the Student Senate just outright is kind of a scary, interesting process. When I first became a senator, I was not really shown the ways of what to do, what it looked like. I just knew that it was required of me to show up every Wednesday. And so I did, and I figured out my thing. But I do want to say that kind of regarding Student Senate, I think there needs to be more accountability with senators. I think that how do we kind of talk to these other schools and say, hey, like you have a spot at Student Senate, please come fill this spot. I think that means that we kind of collaborate with, for example, the Graduate Student Advisory Board, kind of say, hey, we have this seat for you, and come bring nomination up, and we'll see if we can get something for them, kind of like maybe a mentorship program, so that they can be paired up with maybe another senator, and so that they can understand what the process is, now that they've been nominated for a Senate seat, so that nobody's left out in the dry. Because there are many senators, I feel, who are senators and do not really know what that means. And I think that just goes towards every school, especially schools who may have a seat or two and are there every Wednesday, but don't know what they're voting on. So I think overall, it's just kind of making sure that Student Senate is able to reach out to these schools and say, okay, yes, you have a seat. We're not going to leave you high and dry. Here's what we can pair you up with. Here's all the Student Senate processes. And just interacting like that definitely goes a long way.
All right. The next question, University Senate is a joint body between staff, faculty, and students that determines classroom policies. The Vice President oversees student representation on University Senate. What will be your priorities in this role?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Was that from a student administration perspective or representing the student body?
What would the student body priorities be in the University Senate context?
Yeah, so I think just from, meeting with the current student body administration, I've learned that it's impossible to have a productive term if you don't have a meaningful and close impact with the broader university administration. So I think for me and Andrew, a big part of, our time out, this would be fostering and cultivating that relationship to ensure that we're able to get things done, not necessarily be cutting off ties with administration just because we can't see eye to eye on something. We want to collaborate with them and accommodate what they need, but also we would expect the same in return. So it's really boiling down to just having a strong relationship with the administration.
So I want to say that, as a potential role for Vice President, the student body is obviously like a priority of mine that a priority of OneKU that's going to take above all else. But I do agree with Ad Astra. I actually want to say that, kind of student engagement is a big thing. And that means that maybe when we disagree with admin, it's like, okay, well, maybe we disagree with admin, but how can we make a compromise? But how do we make sure that student body is heard first? That means, once again, coming back to the town hall idea, kind of having these separate committees so that maybe before Student Senate or maybe before General Assembly, students can come up and say, okay, well, here's what I'm thinking. And we can have admin there as well. We can have exec as well, just before Student Senate starts, just so we can get those ideas. And if the question is a little more pertinent and you might need a little bit more information, that's where we go to Student Senate and we say, okay, well, this is what we think, this is what admin thinks. This is what the students think. So how can we kind of push that idea and kind of get them to understand better, especially within my role as principal vice president, just because above all else, the student body deserves to kind of understand what's going on. And if they are lost, then we need to handle that.
Actually, I would like to say something here, just very briefly. Only really to address something that Astra had been pushing forth, is that a lot of these comments have been kind of anti-Senate, if I may summarize, and I don't mean to put words into your mouth, so my apologies if so. But very specifically, this most recent statement is the one that's interesting, because to be both anti-Senate and pro-administration is to ask to cut out the middleman, is to essentially say to have an executive and an administration and the students all the way over here. It's a very interesting thing to answer a question about representation at the university, and the student senate is there to represent students to say, yeah, but who needs a senate? We can just have the administration. They'll clearly go down to the average student more often. And I think that is an inherently hopeful idea.
At Astra, requested 1 minute.
Please.
Yeah, so I think that's somewhat of a mischaracterization of what I'm trying to say here. We're not saying that we should eliminate the student senate. We're not anti-student senate in any way whatsoever. What we're trying to say is that you cannot be as productive as possible in your limited time in Senate if you're not able to foster and cultivate a strong relationship with the student administration. In no way are we saying that, we think we should just get rid of the student senate. We're saying let's have a mutually beneficial relationship with all parties involved.
This last question for the vice presidents. The executive branch also represents students in initiatives of the Kansas Board of Regents, state, and national government. What will your administration advocate for in front of these bodies? OneKU.
I love these questions. Okay, so actually recently, as a student senator, I had the opportunity and privilege to go to Topeka, our capital, to kind of talk to representatives to request higher education. That means EOR, which is Educational Open Resources, which we also want to kind of, well, let me tell you what that is. So basically, I think University of Kansas, K-State, Wichita State University, all of those schools available have EOR. And what EOR is imagine a general course requirement class that you are having to take, think Biology 100, Psych 102, general textbook courses that you have to pay for. So imagine paying like, who knows what in tuition, but then having to add another $400 because of textbooks. What the EOR is it moves all that online or to a kind of like a database where all those universities are sharing those textbooks together. And that makes that kind of financial debt on the student way less. And so I think in regards to KBOR, we would be pushing up for the OER and just making sure that kind of maybe our professors are kind of utilizing that tool, just because textbooks are very expensive in higher education. We are all here to get a degree. It is not something to be played with. And I think that besides higher education, I think that just knowing that students are obviously worried about their financials because of that, I think that if you're not utilizing the OER, then it is time to start doing so.
So I mentioned in my introduction that humility is kind of a key cornerstone of what I intend on embodying while in office, and I think that actually applies to this question. So yes, while I could go to the K board, the higher administration, and say, this is what I think we need for the university, these are the best ideas. I'm the person who wants to be humble. I'm not the guy who thinks that I have the right answers to every single problem. I think that when it comes to representing the university at that level, it's hearing viewpoints from student organizations and groups across the entire campus and bringing those to higher administration to ensure that those voices are represented. Again, I don't want to be the person who thinks I have all the right answers. I want everyone's voices to be heard.
Thank you. This next series of questions, all the candidates or the coalitions will have an opportunity to split their 2 minutes as they see fit. We're going to move on to media questions, and a representative from the University of Kansas has prepared some questions for candidates.
Hi, I'm Julia Nansen. I'm a supporter for UDK. My first question is, how do you plan to utilize student media to promote transparency?
Love this question, and I completely respect and acknowledge the role of transparency in this process, and that all the students should be aware of where their dollars are, where the media stands, where anything that we're doing as student senate affects them. But like I mentioned earlier, transparency is great. We should worry about it. First, we should worry about what students are hearing from us. We need to worry about students actually being engaged. We can be as transparent, as clear as we would like, and until students are actually paying attention and actually have vested interest, until students actually care, it won't matter. They don't care currently because of the disinvolvement and disengagement they feel from Student Senate. They've never been aware of how to engage themselves, how Student Senate is actually working for them. They only hear from them once or twice a year when they want something during election week, or two, when something goes wrong and taking something away. So the first priority that we have, Henry and I, that we have, is to go to these different student organizations, gather their perspectives, strategically target these underrepresented communities and show them that their voice matters, and then we can worry about transparency. Once we have their attention, then we can worry about being clear.
Yeah, so this is obviously a very relevant question, just in the whole context of what's happened in Senate and at KU over the past couple months here with the fee review process. So one thing that we're looking to do very clearly in our administration, should we be elected, is to give the University Daily Kansan, which is the premier media outlet for students here on our campus, the opportunity to succeed and work as a partner with Senate rather than in an adversarial fashion, which is what I think we have all observed over at least the past few years, if not stemming back even further. So one concrete thing that we will be starting day one, right out of the gate next year, should we be elected, is a sort of meet the press Senate UDK briefing that we would look to have with the collaboration with the UDK maybe once a month or at some sort of recurring frequency. So, and I believe this has been something that has occurred in the past. I was unable to figure out exactly what that may have looked like in the past, but that is not current practice. So we will be looking to start that. We want to help inform the UDK and as well as other media outlets on campus that are relevant to our students, inform them, explain how our processes work, more clearly why we are doing things, why we are making these different decisions that are affecting and impacting our students here, so that then they will have the opportunity to be successful in writing their articles and making sure that we do have an informed and engaged student body. I'm going to pass it off to Douglas now.
I just want to say, in my time in Student Senate, we've made decisions that have obviously kind of had the student body wondering, are these people really qualified? And I just want to say that Student Senate, I feel, has not interacted enough kind of with the UDK. I think that when I got there, I was honestly shocked a little bit that the UDK was kind of shunned, not really, I mean, student journalism, not really being elaborate or told what decisions are being made to the best of their ability. And as Hamp has already said, we think that kind of partnering with the UDK and any type of journalism outlet is kind of crucial because it allows, here's how I see it. Student Senate is here, obviously student body is over here. Unfortunately, we need somebody to kind of be like, hey, okay, this is what Student Senate is going on. You might not have the time to, be at Student Senate meetings every Wednesday, but Julia, your position actually, here's what Student Senate told me, here's what they did, here's what they passed. Let me give you a summary. Oh, okay, that's what's on. I think that was honestly a no-brainer, and it needs to be implemented because at the end of the day, the UDK is very vital to this university, and I also think that they play a vital role towards any transparency for Student Senate.
How great that I completely support that notion because my answer is UDK. I think there's one thing that the fee deliberation over the last couple of months has screamed from the rooftops is that people care about their media. And ultimately, I'll start by saying that I have a optimistic notion that in a world where we are going to digital pretty unanimously across the board, I think a dream I have is that print media makes a resurgence. I don't know how, I don't know why. I'm saying that this isn't a thing in examination that I'd like to look into. I'd like to see, is there a world in which we still have hard copy books, we still have paper-bound books, we still have things that we like to hold in our hand. One of my favorite experiences being here in 2015 to 2011 was writing to the free-for-all. You send a text, they put you in the newspaper, you say a funny joke, maybe you responded to something that somebody said yesterday, and I'm told this is reminiscent of when my father was in college and somebody would just put something on a bulletin board, and somebody would come by later and put their note on a bulletin board. And I think if we can hold this idea that history does truly repeat itself, that a world in which we can keep students connected is by physically touching something, physically being communicated with correspondence with another individual, be it print media, reporting, simply having reporters on the ground talking to individuals. I think that is kind of the answer of how to keep students engaged through media, to both answer the engagement problem of why can we, they don't want to be communicated with unless they're engaged. Well, I think what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So ultimately, I'll say I think the UDK is the answer. I think talking to the people, getting a better idea, just going to the student groups. Well, how many student groups are there? Well, if you want to go out to the student groups, is that 200 student groups? How many days is that? How many hours? It's 500 student groups. You see, that might take, what are you going to give them, a minute a day? 500 minutes? That's probably not enough. So how are you going to stop both being a president and going to class to meet with all of these student groups? Or who are you going to cut? If you want to go talk to everybody and figure out what they want, who are you going to cut? Or you raise a coalition, you raise a group whose job it is to talk to everybody and get their finger on the pulse. And I think you would all agree that that's kind of the job of the media and independent journalism. Put their finger on the pulse and figure out where the life really is. And the UDK, I think, has their finger on the pulse of this university and where the life of the university is.
Okay, my next question, what do you think is student Senate's greatest weakness currently, and how do you plan to address it?
Yeah, so I think this has already been touched upon, and I think generally speaking, all of us are in agreement. One of probably the most clear and observable weakness in our student Senate practices is that lack of engagement with the student body, the very people that we are looking to represent and advocate on behalf of. So again, I think this circles back to the UDK. Working as a partner with our media outlets, that, in my opinion, is step one in getting the message out and receiving the message from the students that we are looking to represent at a mass scale. There's over 30,000 students enrolled here. We're not going to be able to go have individual conversations with all these students. That's where a media outlet as such is that key partner that is required and essential to be having those discussions. And this is something where when we're able to work with our media outlets instead of against, and they are able to function as an accountability partner even for Senate, to hold us accountable, to give insights to the students into our processes, that will work to make all of our processes and the university funding processes for our student organizations, the fee review, et cetera, more efficient and effective, and thereby bettering the way that we are spending our time day to day, and we will be making a greater impact that directly helps and benefits the students we are trying to advocate for and benefit, which we have fallen short, but incorporating those perspectives, I think, going forwards is the first step in making sure that we're able to shore up our front and make sure that weaknesses that we do observe do not become observable year after year after year. We've identified something, now it's time to make change. That's good.
Just really quickly, how many of you out there, if I can just get a quick poll, of you are students not involved in student senate who have directly felt the positive impacts of the piece of legislation passed in your time at KU? So, one, maybe two. I think that's the answer to your question right there. The way that Student Senate has been run these past few years is it's disenfranchising to the students that are here today. It's disenfranchising to the campus as a whole. What me and Andrew intend to do is to revitalize that franchising and making sure that everyone's voices here are heard.
What I think Student Senate's biggest weakness is replicability. I'll be very short and very frank. I hear a lot of people, as I came in for the first time this year, saying, I don't know, I'm new this year. Okay, but what did they do before you? I don't know. So, the biggest Senate is knowing what you're supposed to do when you get there. So, as a fun story, I worked for Disability Determination Services in the state of Missouri. I decided to grow them. And you have to look into people's jobs, and there's a very core fundamental concept. It takes time to learn a job. The harder the job, the more time it takes. Easy concept. So, if you were to take a quick look at what a career politician's time to get acclimated to a job would be about 8 months. So you mean to tell me that I am asking someone between the ages of 18 to 22 in undergrad and anything above in graduate students to come into a role in an 8-month semester, learn it, potentially with no previous experience, in an applicable way that they can actively go out and start helping their communities, but they're trying to spend the first couple months learning what they're doing, and the last couple months getting ready for finals, getting ready to do the next thing, because most people only serve 1-year terms. So you can engage the students. How do you engage Senate to keep people around for 4 years so that by the time that they're ready to start making meaningful change and start enacting the resolutions that they put forward, and not just having a bunch of people that don't know why this passed last year? How do we get the things that we moved for, fought for in year 1 around and enforced and reinforced until year 4, and then training the new people coming in why we did all of this all along? So I think the solution to this is probably create more of a mentorship role in Senate, to create more of a someone that's been there for 4 years, talking to someone that's been there for 1, and saying, this is why we do it, this is how we did it, this is the rationale that we had when we were making this decision 3 years ago. Why do you think the UDK funding went from $1.70 to $1.80 to $3.60 to $1.50, and everyone's acting like this hasn't been talked about before? All of this has, but we weren't there in the room, and the people that were left. So you can say that Student Senate is the problem, but ultimately, if Student Senate is the problem, who's going to want to do it? So you've got to keep them engaged, and you've got to keep them educated, but yelling at them and saying, hey, I didn't like this resolution that somebody before you passed, and I'm going to yell at you, is a big problem, and it reduces replicability. You reduce your training. You reduce your ability to maintain and keep good people that finally got acclimated to their role, and now they can start making the resolutions. Mistakes happen, but when they do, those people can change, but they need time to stick around. So I want to encourage senators to continue to stick around and improve through the adversity, through people yelling. That's what politics is. So, replicability.
Okay. My last question is, in light of recent funding decisions, how do you plan to balance the interests of different student organizations and ensure fair representation for all next candidates?
I like what you said. I like representation. I think that's the perfect way to describe the solution to this issue. I think representation is what we were lacking when we made the decisions that made so many different people angry at the Senate. I don't think anybody up on the stage is anti-Senate. We're all running for positions in the Senate. So I think that representation and accurate polling is the solution to this problem. If students, more than 3,200 of them, had been involved when we decided where our fee dollars were going, then there wouldn't be outrage. But 3,200 were involved, and that's the problem. The problem lies in Student Senate's current operation. Only 3,200 people feel as if their voices will be heard if they make them heard on a simple poll. The more we engage students, the more we engage those underrepresented communities that we are both a member of, that we both understand where they are, we both understand how to target them and how to ensure that their voices are being heard, The more we do that, the more productive and accurate planning we'll get, and the more accurate representative results we'll get in terms of our funding dollars. That's the solution to that problem.
Yeah, again, this is a very relevant point to some issues that we've observed here, especially throughout the fee review committee process. So one thing that we're going to focus on, should we be elected, is collecting student opinion, especially in regard to budgetary decisions, such as the required student fee review package, is to take consideration of the student viewpoint in a proactive manner rather than reactive. I think especially with the UDK funding proposal, this is something that we noticed after the fact that students were very passionate about, and something that was not going to represent the student perspective if we had continued to go through with that. So I think, again, it's proactive rather than reactive. So again, one thing that we'll be looking to do is create a standing committee, again, comprised of both student senate representatives, different councils, committees, student organizations outside of Senate, etc., with the sole standing charge of going out, before, so it's fee review season in February. So in November and December, months in advance, they go out and collect the student perspective. They utilize, different email strategies, polling tactics, to get the student perspective, document it, and create meaningful data that can then be used in these decision-making processes, such as the required student fee review committee. What we're facing here is a lack of information in these committees. We need to ensure that these committees are well informed in advance of funding decisions of what the very things are that students do care about. Thank you.
Just to add on to what Hampton said, and I have to reiterate this because I think it's very important. Being more proactive as opposed to being reactive. We had a lot of outrage this past Wednesday because of the fee, but these were things that were already in the works, that were already conversations being made, and the student body did not know about it because who knows what it'd be. Whether there was actually a survey that went out earlier in the year, and a lot of students maybe just didn't check their emails. But it's like, okay, they didn't check their email. How can we maybe get them to realize, okay, this fee may have to be passed now. This next time, maybe we can start collecting data a lot earlier, making sure that students, even though they already had the opportunity to kind of fill out the little questionnaire to figure out what they thought was important. How can we make sure? How can our committees? How can our boards kind of reach out early on while we're already trying to get fee together? Because with fee, it takes already months for them to meet up, and they only meet up once, and that's not enough time, I feel, for the student body to kind of fully understand what's going on. And so if we can reach out to them early on in the semester and the year to make sure that they have an opinion as to what is going on in fee, so that when it comes time for us to vote, there aren't as many shocks, and also there can be better transparency as to why decisions were made with student opinion in full effect. Thank you.
Now, I'm telling all these anecdotes because I think it makes me a little bit more lively, because this answer is boring. Audit. I talk about workforce management previously, and it is look at the books, find out what you're spending. Is it good? Keep it around. Is it bad? Eliminate. Ham, what bill are we currently writing?
Can I answer?
Sure, yeah.
I'm working in collaboration with Sam. We've been working on for the last couple weeks here. Been collecting a lot of historical Senate data, and we're going to be, we don't know exactly what shape this is going to take in specific language, but we're going to be looking to potentially create legislation and propose it for the committee to review, the Students' General Assembly to review, to address food funding practices here in Senate.
And we do this in response to something that we observed by sitting in the Student Senate. Someone came up with a legislation and they said, hey, we are spending way too much money just on food. People are trying to get people to go to meetings and they say, let's buy pizza. They don't really care about the organization, they just want lunch. So someone says, let's eliminate all food. And what did I say earlier? People want to stymie debt. They want to get rid of debt. I don't know if you know this, but sometimes debt helps growth. Sometimes you borrow so that you can grow. Isn't that what student loans are? So this idea moves forward. You can eliminate, but at what rate do you eliminate? If you cut a department, you may be cutting your knees out from underneath you. So you eliminate slowly. So Hamp and I, after seeing this bill put forward of let's eliminate all food, that's a big portion. So let's look at the data. How much money do we spend on food? Hamp, was that an easy number to get, yes or no?
I do not currently have that exact number, as it is taking quite a bit of time to dig through these records.
So it's probably not easy. So you probably need to spend some time on this answer. So we got to look at how much money we spend on food. We can't just systemically drop it in the blink of an eye. You may have to taper it off. So we want to move towards a more focused on the individual resolution that may say something a little bit more like, if you want to do an event for food, do an event for food. If you want to enjoy a multicultural event and your food is your celebration, let's celebrate that. But if you want to spend $10 a head to buy somebody Jimmy John's so that they're going to come learn about sports medicine, just give them $5. They'll be equally as happy. But if we're just bribing people to come to things that they're not interested in, it's a loss for everybody. So we audit, we look at why we're spending things, how easy is it to get those numbers so that we can actually look at the things that we need to cut. And all of this is economic analysis that takes a lot of experience in order to look at and be able to see the silent things, like the numbers, like the students that don't vote. You audit it all, and then you get the real truth.
That's all for me, thank you.
Thank you, UK. Our next section is student questions. While you were answering questions from me, I was sifting through the form to see what all of you submitted. These first ones are going to be ones submitted before the debate, so I have time to add them to the PowerPoint, and then we'll move to ones that I sifted through just now. Student Senate requires a lot of institutional knowledge. Where do you draw your experience from, and how do those of you that have no Senate experience adapt? At Astra?
I think, like anybody on the stage, I can tell you about my involvement on campus, my involvement in my school of business. But at the end of the day, I don't think the average student cares about my resume or my accomplishments. I think the average student wants their voice to be heard. They want their dollars to be spent wisely, and they want to be represented. I think that Henry and I are the perfect two people, and we understand what it takes to target these student voices and to have them engage in these processes that should be representing them. No one understands what these committees are better than we do. The diversity of thought, perspective, and background of our coalition adequately prepares us to tackle these issues. We've continuously hired people with the same resumes, the same level of Senate experience. We've gotten the same empty promises, and it's put us into a six-figure deficit, and it's given us a disconnected student. It's beyond time to take a new approach, and that lies with them voting for Henry and I.
One thing.
Oh, do you? We'll let him go.
I've been going last too much. I feel like I've just been responding to what y'all said. Let me take a step back. I think it's an unfair advantage to go last. Please allow me to afford you that advantage. Where does my experience come from? I'm older. I saw the exact same problems at KU in 2015. I saw similar problems in different organizations through business. You see kind of similar problems in the Marine Corps. You see problems with human behavior the exact same way, but you don't get to see them until you've seen different facets of life and you see how they're all interconnected. So the experiences is predominantly living through a lot of things and being able to connect the dots, not just seeing dots. But most importantly, a lot of it is being able to say, I don't know. I always used to hire people and I'd ask them a very simple question. How do you make an old-fashioned? A drink. Some people have. And the only people I would hire are the ones that would say, I don't know, but I'll find out. So you can talk about all of your experiences, but truth be told, if you want to talk about running a $1.7 million budget, and you want to talk about organizing hundreds of students that represent thousands of students, if you want to talk about all of that, the first thing you have to say is, I may not have the experience alone, but I know how to reach out to the people that do. And most importantly, having the wherewithal to say, of all of the things I know I don't know a lot of it. So experience is all about living through a lot of things and being able to be the first person to delegate and say, let's get somebody else's opinion in here.
I am just loving this presidential conversation, more or less presidential debate, because I kind of agree with Sam. I do. So firstly, I want to say I want to say my qualifications just because I worked hard for them. But I am the vice president of my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I've been a part of the Black Student Union for a year now. I'm now a part of Senate. I've just been doing a bunch of little different things in different organizations. And all these organizations, Sam kind of touched on it. A lot of organizations kind of have the same problems. It's like, okay, well, so they do this well, but maybe they don't do this well. When I came to Senate, I was like, okay, here's what Senate does well, but here's what Senate, same problem as maybe this org or maybe this org. Okay, how can we fix it? With me, and once again, he touched on this. Saying I don't know is not a bad thing. Sometimes you need to figure it out and ask questions. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'll walk up to the vice president 2 years ago. I'll walk up to the vice president that is now, and I'll say, what am I doing? Or how can I do this? How did you do this? How did you tackle this idea? And I think being able to do that and also asking for help, if you don't know something, I'll ask Camp or I'll ask just anybody who might know, and I'm kind of figuring it out from there is key because especially being the first year in Senate, that experience has allowed me to build up, okay, so this is how the Senate runs. Maybe this is something that I don't know about and Senate kind of isn't really elaborating too well about, so maybe I can also figure it out by maybe speaking up to the Senate's advisor or something like that. I feel like if you do not have experience in the Senate, it's definitely going to be a little bit harder just because when I got into Senate, like I said, it was a whole new world. Money being moved around, like direct money being moved around in finance committee. And so I think asking for help, talking to your peers and making sure that honestly pulling experiences from other organizations and talking to those peers, saying, okay, well, this is what this organization is doing. Do you have any input? At the end of the day, communication, interaction with everybody else in Student Senate, and even those outside of Senate, that's a key.
I will just briefly add on. I do think there is value in having at least some understanding of the Senate process. I mean, me and Douglas, we've been in these meetings all year, and there's been conversations about Senate not working to enfranchise a student. It's actually disenfranchising the student. So I think if you don't have a firm comprehension of the current practices that you are arguing could potentially disenfranchise the student, you're not going to be able to know what roadmap needs to be developed to get those very problems fixed.
Our next question is about transparency. Many students are concerned with transparency and trust, helping bridge the relationship between students and Sam?
There's actually a couple of things that I'm just going to talk about active plans that I've kind of focused on. First and foremost, just a little bit more accountability. I would really like to resurface a judicial and disciplinary board for Student Senate because, and I always bring up the law thing again, but hey, you're just surrounded by it right now. Having that accountability of a public record, if you do this wrong, this is the consequence that comes through. It's great for transparency. The idea that we can set forth a principle, enforce it, and any lack of that enforcement can be met with a public answer. Don't do that. So transparency for me is going to start at least with the practical application of me wanting to resurrect a judiciary in our current government. And that's a long-term process. But I think it's the first ultimate step in transparency because any single infraction, and this is a very minor one, but this is a very big one, fee deliberation met, as they always do, and they converse. They meet and converse, and then there's a debate, and they say, why wasn't this published? Why wasn't this shared, the Open Act of Kansas? And they say, well, we've been doing what we've been doing. Now, unfortunately, that is a violation, but I'm sure it's one that was made in good faith. They meant to meet over the fee, and they meant to have a good discussion and do the best for the university. But they were met with adversity. everyone was coming at them and saying, hey, you should have published this. So what would a judiciary do in that situation? Okay, public, we all know, we do this in person. We do this out loud. We do it better next time. We course correct from the top, and from there, when you see a replicable process, this is what the Constitution says about this. We do it every time. If it fails, we make it public. So ultimately, judiciary will help keep the top down accountable, and that will help with transparency.
So obviously, and I appreciate and respect the role of accountability and transparency and making sure that we're doing what's right for the student. So that's why I would like to mention that there are senators on our ticket in our coalition who are already in Senate working on channels to communicate with the student, to communicate what's going on, be transparent, and actually have a method to hold the senators accountable for things that go on in the interest of the student. There are senators on our coalition who have already done the legwork to make sure that these processes are happening. That includes a Canvas class that students might have access to, and building an email database by polling and by being present at student events to gather emails. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of upset students here, and transparency doesn't matter until we can engage them. Transparency is important, but we can be as clear as possible, and it won't matter until students are actually tuned in, engaged, and actively participating in this democracy. And they currently aren't because of how esoteric student Senate has become. People don't know their senators, they don't know how to reach out, they don't know how to get involved, and that's what Henry and I are here to solve. We're here to show students what the power of two average students at KU from underrepresented and excluded communities within Student Senate can do by organizing and by leveraging a diverse ticket of experience, of background, of experience and background, and actually getting things done.
Yeah, so this is something that me and Douglas are both very passionate about, making our processes more transparent in the interest of then increasing our level of accountability to the student body that we serve. So again, the town hall, we're looking to make our process and our senators more accessible and more easily understandable to the students that we are looking to serve without that level of casual conversation that can be had within the context of a less formal town hall style meeting rather than a student senate's assembly meeting where, you know, Robert's rules are being followed and a student walking in might not understand the exact process for having a question answered. Those questions can be brought to this town hall Q&A style discussion session where you can meet with Senate leadership, your community senators, et cetera, and have that conversation and action can be planned moving forwards to get that fixed. So that's step one. Step two, email is not the best way to communicate. Our students, I mean, I'm sure the students in here can back me up on this. You're not reading every Outlook email that's coming from some KU admin account. Students are not reading that. They don't care about it. It's in the inbox. It's sitting there unread. We want to do a weekly Instagram one-pager that details, you know, the 3 funding bills that were presented in Finance Council and then accepted in General Assembly, brief description, you know, what is going on a university level, providing outreach lanes and avenues to students who might not know about something that's happening on a university scale that is going to be affecting them. So it's increasing that access to the information, and it's our job as Senate to make sure that we're collecting that and distributing that to the student body to then receive their perspective that we can go advocate to university committees, councils, et cetera, on their behalf. And finally, another thing we're going to look to do is host, again, in the interest of that casual, more accessible distribution of information, work with KJHK, the student radio station, work with them to structure, you know, just a 15-minute even style, you know, 3 times a semester, a student executive staff member, you know, a student leadership position within Senate, the officer in that chair, even just a community senator, a senator representing an academic department can go on in a podcast style setting, talk about what they're doing, talk about what their constituencies are facing, you know, raise the issues that can then be digested via that avenue of a podcast style dissemination of information so that our students can know, you know, on a more intimate level in a friendly way, what our leadership is working on, what the Senate is focusing on, and how better we can work to service the student body.
This next question is about sustainability. What KU recycling being funded at unsustainable levels? What concrete initiatives will your coalition introduce to make KU more environmentally friendly? Okay.
So I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but Hemp and I we plan to work with KU Recycling. We've seen specifically there's a bunch of trash cans that are always overflowing, or there's this trash on Wesco Beach. It's kind of like, so what can we do about all of that plastic and paper waste? Well, we plan to introduce kind of an alternative, maybe biodegradable trash bags, just trying to get rid of some of that. And kind of also we've seen recycling bins, or like, okay, so how can we reinstate recycling? It's kind of been a wishy-washy topic at my time at University of Kansas. And so we're kind of see if we can kind of coordinate with the city of Lawrence. I'm gonna see if we can also get like an increased proper usage, whether that be disposable cans, just anything that can be recycled.
Yeah, so I guess just kind of going off that briefly. So, recycling is funded at an unsustainable level by far. I mean, it is understaffed, underfunded. They don't have the resources or support from the university that they need to be doing their jobs effectively. And so I think one component of this, they are funded within our fee review process. But I think the second component of this is, as our student advocates, we need to be advocating to university funding processes, the university administrative, finance, vice provost. Talk to those people, have those conversations, and let them know that this is something the student body cares about, and we would like them to take a more engaged, proactive role in making sure that something like the KU recycling department is being properly funded so that it could be utilized effectively.
Sam,
Astra, I'll use that after real quick.
Of course, and I think this is very important. I think this is very pertinent to the average student. We all care about it, but I think it's a symptom of a larger issue. Deciding what happens with one budget issue, like environmentalism or recycling, doesn't matter until we address our actual freedom of the budget. Like I said, we're one of 5 universities in the country that has full allocation power over every student Senate dollar. And if we don't address the budget, we'll lose that, and recycling won't be the only thing that we'll worry about. Until we address that by gathering what students actually want their money being spent on, then we can start talking about recycling or any other issue that might constrain the budget in any sort of way. We need to target what's actually happening here. We need to get to the root first.
Sam.
Yeah, sorry, digested. I can tell you right now, and I believe in answering honestly, I don't know. And more specifically, this is not a topic I've researched. So I can only tell you about how I go about learning and digesting topics I don't know about. And I actually agree, going to the top and saying, hey, let's ask these questions to the people at the top is a great device to figuring out how we can start getting KU recycling funded better. I'm going to tell you what I've been saying this entire time about every level of the institution and replicability. I'll tell you the first person I'm going to ask, custodial workers. When is the last time anyone here stopped and asked the custodial workers what they observed in the building? When's the last time you've asked anyone who is constantly dealing with recycling and doing the motions of moving it from point A to point B, but seeing the waste right next to it? You can talk about the expenditure and how much you're going to give KU recycling, but how can we reduce the expenditure and the need for that? Well, it could be as simple. Sometimes, I've done consulting for restaurants, and the answer to the biggest problem of a trash issue was where the trash can was. Because a bottleneck, when you look forward, you see a trash can, you put the trash away. What if we just started putting recycling bins in better lines of visibility, not behind doors and corridors where I need to scan an entire floor, and by that time I'm just going to throw it in the trash out of inconvenience. So what if we can start easing the burden of the cost to the entire department by talking to the people that have the interest in being more cost effective?
Thank you. These next questions were submitted during the debate. Firstly, Why did you choose the coalition you did, and why are you running under the moniker OneKU at Astra, the Elimination Party, respectively?
Yeah, so the coalition name has been, and what the coalition represents has been a big question that me and Douglas and other people involved in the coalition have been doing a lot of critical thought about over the past, months that this has been in progress. And, this is something where the Ad Astra coalition was presented to us at the beginning of this. But, as time went on and we saw what was happening with decisions being made in current Senate administration, just in the interest of, again, and I think if I can speak on behalf of you guys, giving that fresh perspective into Senate, me and Douglas decided that it was best to pursue a different coalition branding to ensure that we are making sure that the perspective we are bringing is new and it is one that represents what we truly believe. And I think it's a simple name. It's OneKU. I think that is something that embodies the true values and perspectives we are looking to incorporate into our university at a Senate level. And I think that keeping it brief, keeping it short, keeping it sweet, OneKU embodies the true aspect of what we are looking to do should our coalition be elected into office.
Hamp, you actually hit the mark. So yeah, Hamp, what he had said was correct. Particularly for me, OneKU, I wanted to run under something. When Hamp reached out to me, I wanted to run under something that was something I believed in. OneKU is what I believe in. I've always felt that us as students, we should be as one body. We should be able to celebrate together, even though we are all in different organizations and stuff like that. And when we decided to figure out who would run under, we came under OneKU, just because it fit with our ideals of kind of an idea of student senate, student body, complete visibility, right? So what does that look like? That looks like, once again, our one-pagers that we've talked about, the town hall, these are things that OneKU, I think, represents, just because you cannot be OneKU if this piece of KU is doing this and you don't even know about it. Thank you.
Yeah, so personally, the Ad Astra name resonates deeply with me. A lot of you may know that Ad Astra is part of the Kansas State motto, Ad Astra Prospera. And that motto was born during their struggle for statehood as a free state. They went against the grain in becoming a free state, and it took a lot to actually get through that process and actually become a state. And I can personally say that this struggle and the fact that Kansas was a free state really defined a lot of my life of my family tree, and continues to affect me to this day. Personally, I can trace my lineage back to former slaves who moved from Texas to Kansas to enjoy the privileges that the free state did offer. I identify in a meaningful way with what impact the Ad Astra motto had on the state of Kansas at the time and what it had on my family. And I'm excited to keep building on the principles and the ideas that were shared by Kansas at the time. I think that we can keep on building and keep on doing great work under that Ad Astra motto.
Why?
Yeah, so I chose the name Ad Astra because it reflects, not only the state motto, but also the spirit of resilience and progress that Kansas embodies. So, you mentioned instead of a free state, a place that stood up for what was right and went against the status quo. I think similarly, I want to bring that same fresh perspective and willingness to change the status quo of student government. I think that me and Andrew want to push for change and not settle for the way things always happen. We're committed to creating a campus environment where we challenge old ideas and hear our students' perspectives. Kind of just as the Ad Astra motto encourages us to do. It's about bold leadership, even when it's difficult, and driving meaningful progress.
Why the Dead Elimination Party? And shortly, I started talking about needs earlier today, so my answer will also be needs, more specifically Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the base level of what we're operating at right now is a deficit. And we've brought that up quite a bit, and let's address it. Okay, so when you address it, you're gonna have to keep a couple of things in mind. First and foremost, people's food, people's water. We're working on food bills to make sure that everyone has enough to eat and everybody's being invited to the table. Then you have safety. Hundreds of safety initiatives can be thought about, but getting them through is the important thing. But you can't really do that if you don't have the money. So we're going to try and eliminate debt to make sure that people are having the food that they need, getting it distributed to groups in the proverbial way. Then, making sure they're invited to the table, that they feel safe. Right now, Student Senate, we've been a little scared. On the Finance Council, there's constant pressure at the beginning of the meeting. How much money do we have left this year? So, making sure that we can start dealing with these questions less as a place of fear and just trying to survive and move forward, that's when we start getting to confidence. That's when we start getting into esteem. That's when we start getting to self-actualization. That's when we start growing. So all of this comes down to what we need, debt elimination, and stop acting out of a place of reactivity and fear, and start moving into a place of safety and eventually growth. That's why the debt elimination part.
One more student question, and then we'll have to move on. Who is each coalition has referred to an average student that as a symbol of somebody who isn't represented in Senate? Who is the average student at K? OneKU.
I personally do not believe that an average student exists. There are no average students. You can't average the different unique identities that we see here at KU. You know, we have a extremely diverse student population here. People are coming from different backgrounds. You know, our minority student enrollment this past year was 7,960, which is over a quarter of our entire enrolled student body. So I think the question of who is the average student, it's not the proper question to ask. I think it must, in the interest of representing all these voices that we would like to represent, it must be represented on a more specific individual basis. Identities cannot be reduced down to a running average. I think it's as simple as that.
I will say, once again, I agree. There's not an average student, but I do want to say that what I guess you might fall under a weird construct of average are students who get here and they don't know what they want to do, or maybe they know what they want to do and they're like, okay, well, what opportunities do I have? I was that student. I did not know what was going on really when I got here, besides to take my classes and go back home. But then it is what becomes of that student, such as myself, whether it goes to me doing this organization or that. Students who, you know, all your students who live off campus have to ride a bus to get here. There is no set definition for an average student, but the average student is also the student who comes to campus, goes to classes, sees what their campus union is like, and is like, okay, where do I go from here?
I think I agree. I think a lot of the beauty lies in the fact that there isn't one type of student here. There isn't one demographic or one population that we need to represent here. But at the end of the day, there are some real populations out there that have been excluded from these processes. And simply saying that there isn't an average student is pretty easy to pick up on. It's a pretty easy cop-out to avoiding accountability and avoiding what we actually owe these students. Just saying that it's too big of a group to actually serve in one way is a really easy way to just say we're not doing anything. I think that at Astra, we're looking not necessarily towards the average student, that's clearly obvious, but we're looking to the population that we have not included in this decision-making process before. We know where we're at, we know where they're at, we know how to target them, and we know exactly what needs to be done from here on out, because at the end of the day, only 3,200 people were involved in the last election. At an undergrad, over 20,000. So there isn't an average student, and we need to find them, yes, because they're not involved.
I just want to add on, you all recall the legislation earlier, people who've been positively impacted by a piece of legislation passed by Senate. It was maybe 1% of this room. While, in a literal sense, there is no such thing as an average person, as everyone has mentioned today. I think, the approach we want to take is the average person is someone who's felt unheard and wants to bring, change that people can realize and reap the benefits of the student senate. So me and Andrew intend on breaking down the confines of student senate that they more or less have in place and encapsulating the entire student body. That means, actually having conversations, having presence on campus, one where people can feel comfortable coming up to you and expressing their issues with you.
Yeah, I would just like to briefly respond to something that Andrew said in his speech. When me and Douglas were just talking before Astra spoke, never did we ever iterate the sentiment that we believe that because there is no average student, then the student body is too big to be served. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that it's unfair to reduce down the demographics that we have here at KU to simply an average student that we're looking to re-enfranchise, as they're arguing that that student is disenfranchised. It's more nuanced than that, and looking over that nuance, I think, is unfair to these student bodies that we are looking to represent here in our Senate.
Just because I enjoy being different, allow me to try and answer. I think there might be an average student, but I'll do it in an abstract way. So you're gonna hate this right away. I think the average student is a collection of needs. Let me hammer it home. I go to school in the morning, and I'm thinking about what I need. Did I eat that day? Did I remember to take my medication? Did I go to the gym? All of these things. The first thing I really believe the average student wants to make sure they have is their basic biological needs met, then that they feel safe, and then that they're able to grow some confidence. All of this it's going to repeat itself, and replicability is kind of a theme here. All of this connects. So ultimately, the average student that lives in the dorms wants to make sure that their shower pressure is appropriate, that goes to the dining facility to make sure that they have options, if it's vegan or if it's carnivorous. People want to make sure that their needs are being met. The average student thinks the same way. I eat, I go to school, I'm happy. So the average student is someone that has needs, and we need to start looking for those. And if they want to feel engaged, and that's a need they have, that's a thing we look for. If they want to feel represented, and that's a need they have, that's another thing we look for. We just start at the ground and make sure that they have their basic needs met, and we build up.
This last section is a little different. The candidates were asked before the debate to prepare one question for the other coalitions. We'll start with Astra.
For either coalition, could you tell the audience or tell us about the most impactful piece of legislation you sponsored during your time as student senate?
Actually, I have a little spin to it because, once again, I'm community senator for the Black Student Union. So let me tell you the piece of legislation that I actually was against, and then it did not go through. It was a proposition to dissolve the DEI fund. That was something, so right after, his name's Noah Coggin, he was our old treasurer. He kind of talked about the deficit and the $170,000 deficit that we were in, and was just like, okay, so kind of basically, where do we cut first? And the DEI fund was the first on the chopping block, and my constituents were not happy with that. Many other organizations were not happy with that, and that was kind of also kind of the beginning of our university's rollbacks. And so just kind of really, let me tell you why this was really my favorite. It was my favorite because it was really great to hear a bunch of voices, student concern, come together and say, okay, no, can we not cut the minority or the unrepresented funding first? Maybe can we look for another alternative? And so kind of be a part of that, being able to tell people about it, kind of to rally for that. That was my favorite piece for me personally.
Which time is it?
You have 45 seconds.
Yeah, I guess just briefly, I can continue on to this a little bit. Again, definitely agree with Douglas. Identified a concern that his constituents had and was able to address that in a proactive way, and prevent bad legislation from getting passed, which is just as important at the end of the day as getting good legislation into motion and through our processes. And again, one of my favorite that I've observed throughout the Senate process that I was involved with is the fee review package. And I think briefly, obviously there are concerns, about what the fee package did entail. That is something I served on that committee as an ex officio non-voting member. Just seeing the student perspective be incorporated, that bill set that spark that we were able to then view that student perspective and incorporate it into decision making, and it spurred a bigger conversation here over the past couple of weeks.
I just want to make sure I had the specific wording to be good questions.
Yeah, what was the most important or impactful piece of legislation you sponsored during your time as the Senate?
Most important. Can't say. I think it is a losing man's game to say that your needs are more important than someone else's needs and try and quantitate that based off of your perception of your needs. I think a person that says, hey, I'm doing this for Narcan initiatives because I know a lot of people that have substance abuse problems or are worried that a molecule of fentanyl may kill them, and the active cure is nowhere nearby, is a need to one person, and that is a very important initiative that I could support. But then you have people on the other end saying, wait, hold on. I'm being told that I am less of a person because of my color, my love, my beliefs, and that's very important to them. So supporting legislation in those regards is important to them. So important to me means nothing. I'll tell you this, the law school cared a lot about the UDK. My constituents cared a lot about free press, transparency, reporting, accountability. Do you know how many people messaged me about the Constitution of Student Senate and the violations that they witnessed? Of course, they're reading the U.S. Constitution on a daily basis and yelling at Supreme Court judges in the TV. But the idea is, what's important to a person, and the legislation that passed is all about their values, and I can only represent my values. And with student body president, you have to represent the average student. What did I say that was? People with needs.
Thank you. OneKU, your question.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of conversation tonight about how students aren't necessarily being enfranchised by the Senate that's supposed to be serving them. So what is your coalition specifically going to do to structurally change our processes and procedures to re-enfranchise these students and create the tangible benefit to these students that has been said does not currently exist?
Yeah, I don't think we need a current structural change. We're not anti-Senate. No one up here is anti-Senate. We're running for positions in the student Senate. There's a need for structural change. There's a need for changing perception. And that is brought about by having two fresh faces in office who can show students what's done and what is possible when average students, backed by the diversity of thought, experience, and background of a coalition of experienced senators, can do with organization, can do when they're tapping the voices of the average student. There's no need for a structural change. There's a need in perception change for the average student. We need to move to continue what we've been doing during our campaign, meeting student organizations where they're at, far after our campaign is over, showing them that we're two faces they can recognize on campus. They can see in the positions, in the places where we can meet them where they're at. That's what they need to see. They don't need a structural change in how things are done. They need to know exactly who their senators are, how to reach out to them, how to hold them accountable, and how to get involved in this process.
I think you answered that, pretty aptly. And I've said this before, but, after campaign week, after election week, it's something, if it's an election that we win, for us, that's where the campaigning truly is just getting started. It's from there, attending even more student organizations, going to even more groups across campus, and making sure that we're advocating for the voices of the groups as well.
I couldn't imagine saying students aren't engaged, students aren't heard, and then saying we need no change. We need no systematic and structural change. Ultimately, I will say out loud, In order to engage students, if that's your platform, you have to make some change if you believe they're not currently engaged. So the answer to how to ask for the structural change, I've been saying it all day. Look at the needs, do the analysis, do the work, talk to the people at the ground level, understand them, believe them, listen to them, and then make the decisions to what change might be appropriate. But we analyze, we listen, we respect. So yes, what structural change? Listen to the people and they'll tell you.
And Sam, any questions for you?
Without any personal benefit in this answer, why are you running?
I'm running because I share the perspective of a lot of students that I interact with, a lot of students that we've met during our campaign, who feel frustrated with how students in the grant, who feel left out of these processes, who feel disrespected, who feel like their voices are not being heard. I'm running for the remainder of the students who did not vote in the last election, to convince them that this isn't a process just for people who have had years to take part in, just for people who have buddies to take part in. This is not a process for them. This is a process for the student at KU to have their voice be heard. I'm running because I'm frustrated and I recognize that there is a lot to be done here.
For me, both my parents were alumni of the university, so I kind of reaped the benefits secondhand, and then myself firsthand. I mentioned this earlier, but the university has given me a lot of really great experiences. So I think for me, it's in some way paying the debt back to the university, showing my gratuity for everything that it's given me. And then beyond that, Andrew touched on it lastly there. I think we've been a little frustrated with the way things have been run, and we felt like we wanted to see change for the better.
Yeah, so this is a good question, and I think is very important in this process. So, over the past few years, being at the university, had a lot of time to observe. This past year, ended up taking a more involved role as the fund development director, running the community development fund, previously the DEI fund. And in my role there, it's been extremely enlightening to work on a grassroots level with all of these student organizations. These are the students here that I'm interacting with on a day-to-day basis. And interacting with them and hearing their problems and their struggles and what they view to be the issues with the way that our procedures currently work from an infrastructure perspective with Senate, and particularly our funding. It made me realize that there are items here in our university, not just relating to Senate, that need more of the student perspective. And that is what me and Douglas are going to work to incorporate from a broad scale perspective into all of our decision making, no matter what it may be going forward, should we be elected.
Okay, so I'm just gonna keep it blunt. I love every single student on this campus. I love that we have so many different majors. I love that there's just so many different resources for each and every student. We've got visual arts, we've got School of Business, School of Journalism. I am a civil servant. I want to make sure that our students are taken care of. We did not come here for free. We're all paying, whether that be with scholarship, whether that be with alumni, this or that, whether that be you go to work after class. And so you deserve to have a voice in Student Senate, and you deserve to understand the processes, even if you can't be there. And I want to make sure, Hamp and I want to make sure that students get that, because there's just too many different identities and too many different students. And, we believe that they deserve the right to understand what's going on at the university that they study at, and everybody deserves to thrive here. And so that's why I'm running. That's why Hamp is running. Thank you.
Thank you. Event services will absolutely take us up to 15 minutes. So I'm a little bit messed up on time, so I'm going to have to limit your closing statements to 2 minutes each. But we'll go in the same order that we did opening statements, starting with vice presidents.
Okay, I'm first. Thank you. So Now that the debate is over, I want to thank you all for coming tonight and making sure that our student government is in capable hands. You've all come because you care, both about your education and the people you share this campus with, and I hope that I, as well as HAMP, have been able to show you our genuine vision for the campus and the students of KU, a vision that is clear and authentic to our earnest extent, to our fullest extent of OneKU. I, as a student, have had the ability to engage with the many diverse organizations and experiences on campus, and I want to reiterate that everyone who's finding their place at our university shouldn't have to be concerned about whether their student government is making decisions that can't be justified or visible to the student body that they serve. We, as OneKU, have the initiative and drive to lead your student government by interacting with our community to a much-needed degree. To safeguard and prioritize your rights to a welcoming campus, to a more accessible education where you can utilize everything that KU offers instead of the bits and pieces. We want to prioritize what makes our institution so amazing. It's the students, obviously, because it starts with you guys. I'm grateful that we all here tonight, what it seems like, want the best for KU. I know that the student body is highly capable of choosing what they want to see for our institution. I'm grateful that you have all allowed me to be here and showcase what I believe can best serve us all. Once again, my name is Douglas Jamal, and I thank you for the opportunity to make a OneKU a reality.
I think first it's important to say that no matter if you support Astra, OneKU or the Elimination Party, make sure that you're at least voting for someone when the time comes to vote council that you realize. Secondly, I first just want to address really quickly what Sam mentioned in his response to what we said. Basically saying that we aren't advocating for change. That's false. What Andrew said was that we aren't advocating for structural change. We are advocating for an administrational change. Student Senate has the obligation to seek out students on campus and go to them. Expecting everyone to come to Student Senate with their issues is unrealistic if they don't know how. Then again, if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that the student body is calling for change in student government. The status quo is not working, and much like your coalition name, me and Andrew plan on delivering that change, going against the grain and delivering all of you the change that you deserve. We are bringing you tangible items that we will be able to deliver on during our time like this. That can't happen when we have a cycle of the same people previously involved in Senate becoming the leadership year after year. I haven't made a career out of campus politics, and I never will. I won't make big promises to entice your vote and then disappear when it comes time to act. The other candidates and its members are people who haven't been involved in the Senate. It's time to stop this cycle.
Yeah, so first off, I want to say thanks again, everyone, for coming 2 hours of your day on a Friday. Tonight you've heard a few different visions for the future of our student body. I believe that OneKU's platform is the most beneficial, the most tangible, and the most executable for our student body and the needs that need serviced here on our campus. At the end of the day, this election is not about me or any of my opponents. It's about you. It's about the students who want a Senate that will listen, will act, and will deliver real, tangible results that will benefit and impact our communities here. Over the past years, I've had the privilege of working alongside the very students we are looking to help to tackle these issues. And I'm running for student body president because I believe we can do even more. We can make our student government more accessible, more transparent, and more effective. I've laid out plans to build community, improve our infrastructure here, and promote efficiency in our practices. But beyond policies, this campaign is about leadership, about who will stand up, show up, and fight for the needs of our students in whatever shape that may take. As you think about who you want leading your student government, ask yourself, who has the experience, the drive, and the vision to make meaningful change? Who will not just talk about these ideas, but actually make them happen? I believe that Douglas and I have the right experiences and skill sets to make our campus the best that it can be, and we would be honored to earn your vote here in the election. Thank you for being here tonight, for engaging thoughtfully in this conversation, and for your commitment to making campus a place where each Jayhawk can thrive, connect with one another, and create lasting memories. Thank you.
First, I want to reiterate the dedication that you guys are bringing today, and the dedication that we all have here for our university. I don't think anybody should be here thinking that KU students don't care about their university. Thank you all for coming today and having your voices be heard. Thank you for being involved in this process. I think that's the only way that anybody on the stage wins, is by the student involvement. I don't think that anybody should be here thinking that this isn't a process that includes them. I think that we should have something here real for all KU students to be a part of. To summarize all of our key points and the things that we're running on that have ignored students in the past, we want to have a homecoming parade, we want to have job preparation, we want academic support, and we want student engagement to be a priority in this administration. We think that KU can be a campus, and it should be a campus that listens to its students. We think that experience goes a long way, and that's why we have plenty of it and an ample amount of it on our coalition. But at the end of the day, the experience that we keep electing and the experience that we keep putting in office is the reason why we are in a six-figure deficit. Our coalition's strength lies in our diversity of thought, background, and experience, and that's how we bring the most well-rounded perspective to the student body here at KU. This won't just be a pivotal election, but it'll be one to steer us back on track as KU students. Everyone has shown love for their campus today, and on the 7th, I urge you to make the decision that doesn't just work best for you, that doesn't just benefit you, but benefits future Jayhawks for years to come. Thank you to everyone here. I think together, we can turn today's ideas into tomorrow's realities.
I tend to be long-winded, so I'll keep this one as short as possible. Happy Friday. I've talked about needs. I've talked about understanding the process, repeating the process, and making sure it's understandable and communicable for everyone that comes afterwards. Talking to people from the ground, in the middle, at the top, talking to them all, getting an idea of the full picture, understanding, and through understanding, making sure people are fed, safe, confident, and able to achieve their growth. So ultimately, as a little bit older of an individual, I can say I have witnessed lots of times in the workforce after my own graduation, times where people kind of forget that. They want the results, but not the work. So allow me to say, the work that I can do is one thing, but I want to make sure that everyone feels supported, because the work that they all need to do needs to get done. When they come to class in the beginning of the day, they're putting in work, and they need to know that they're supported through that work, and that they're going to be okay at the end of it all. So I can put in the work, but ultimately, having everybody want to put in the work together is how we, as a collective, as an organization, as a university, and ultimately as a world, move forward. So we talk, we understand, we support each other's needs, and then we will all want to go in the same direction. So I keep talking about needs. So I said all the way at the beginning who I was, why I'm here, and what you need. And ultimately, I think you need someone who cares about your needs. Thank you.
Thank you to all candidates. Remember to vote April 7th at 6 a.m. There should be a link in your inbox if I can get the email communications go out. And thank you all for coming and attending this debate and making it a success.
Hey, you did that. You did that as well. And you definitely did that. Oh, good. Woo. That was good.
Oh, it's almost a recycling bin if you want me to take yours.
I'm so holding on to it. Thank you.
Douglas, I'll take a recycling bin if you're done with it.
Oh, here, let me.
Do it for your hydration.
I saw you knocking the bottles out. I said, you know what? Maybe it's time.
I told you, volleyball right before this.
Good job, man. Ooh, woo. How are you feeling?
I feel great. Let's we're getting drinks over here though.
Yeah.
There's no skipping. Good night,